Start again. Okay, very good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are Parak Aleph, Mishnah Tet, the 9th Mishnah of the first chapter. We're going to only spend not even maybe 5 minutes on this Mishnah. As we go through Pirke Avot, there'll be some Mishnah we'll spend quite a bit of time, some less time. This one is a somewhat of a continuation of the last one, which we did talk quite a bit about. I'll read it to you. This is Shimon ben Shetach Omer, Heve marbel lachakor et ha'edim. You should do due diligence when it comes to cross-examining witnesses. Be careful of your words. Because maybe from the way you speak and what you ask, they'll learn to lie. Okay, but first of all, let's just understand Pshat. What is he saying? We know that there's a requirement from the Torah that when you have witnesses come, depending on the kind of case, there's more and more levels of difficulty of the kinds of questions that need to be asked of witnesses. The most severe kinds of questions, I'll give you an example in a moment, of course, are capital cases when someone's life is on the line, less so when it comes to monetary matters. We also know that you have to have a minimum of 2 witnesses in any case that has to do with, in most cases, in certain cases, a single witness is permitted, but that's not the most common. But when a person comes to court, again, we're picturing our minds a regular courtroom, but we're talking Beit Din. And in the ancient times, even the Sanhedrin, okay, the court of 71. And someone comes, witnesses come, they say they saw so-and-so kill another guy. Oh, okay, fine, let's execute the guy. No, it didn't work that way, obviously. It is ad kedei kach such a difficult and I would almost say convoluted type of way they have to ask questions, according to one opinion, that not only do they ask time, day, place, where was the sun, meaning what time of day was it, but according to one opinion, if it was somewhere near a tree, they had to identify what the twigs of a tree on the side looked like. Why? Because we try our best. The Torah imposes death sentence, obviously, for a number of things. But truth of the matter is, the amount of times in the history of the Jewish people that the Sanhedrin actually executed somebody was extremely rare, to such an extent that it says that a Sanhedrin that executed one person more than once in 70 years was a bloody Beit Din. So if that's the case, well, you make it so hard to execute someone, so why have the death penalty? Answer: if I said to you, if you kill someone, you're going to get slapped on the wrist. Okay, so I'll get slapped on the wrist. It's to explain to us how chamur, how severe certain things are in Judaism. We know that when it comes to traffic rules, right? Some cases you're going to get a ticket and you're going to pay a fine. Some you lose your license. Some you get to, you can't get it back even, depending on certain types of offenses. And all those offenses are the quote punishment is commensurate in theory with how severe the offense is. So therefore, certain things may get a death penalty, and other things may get makot, and other things may get something else. And by the way, just parenthetically, in Judaism, there's really almost no such thing as jail. Right, very rare to have. Sometimes, under certain rare circumstances, they pretty much know the guy did it. They don't have corroborating witnesses, whatever it might be. There's certain times, but it's not the same thing like we picture. Now, if that's the case, we already know that there's rules that you have to do cross-examination of witnesses to verify that what they're saying is true. So why does Shimon ben Shetach say, so if you remember, be very careful to really investigate the witnesses. So if you remember what we talked about last week, the story that Shimon ben Shetach made a mistake that ended up having a witness executed. And therefore, it's really a message to himself as well, that you really have to be super duper careful in order to investigate witnesses, to get the true story, to get down to the nitty gritty. In addition to that, we also taught that the way the questions are asked can also influence the witnesses, and therefore they have to be careful not to ask certain types of questions. Now, we have that in modern day law. In a courtroom in the United States, again, are talking about where there's a jury trial, which you don't have here. There's what are called leading questions. You cannot, in certain cases, in most cases, I should say, in court, you cannot ask leading questions. That's one thing. The other thing is that if let's say the witness is lying, said he saw the murder, and the judge happens to say, well, I'm going to ask you a question. On the day that you say you saw it, that was the day that Maccabi was playing, right? And they won by oh, yeah, that's right. He can imply something. Remember, the speaker implies, the listener infers. The judge can imply something, the witness can infer what he wants to, and then he'll make up something. So that's what Shimon ben Shetach is saying. From both sides, the judge has to be careful to make sure he asks the questions and insightful questions and incisive questions to get to the truth. And he also has to be careful not to say something that could encourage the witness to say something based on the questions and make something up and therefore come up with false testimony. Now, again, we said last week,
with these kind of testing to see, that these.
Okay, so what you're making an assumption that the judge trying to do it to get to the truth. Mm-hmm. You're making that assumption because maybe the judge is just trying to help the guy, mm-hmm. right? So mm-hmm. that's a possibility. Mm-hmm. You're right. On the one hand, that you're right. On the other hand, it's not, because it depends on what the perspective of the judge is. That's good.
Political position. Is that like how do you become a judge?
As shofet is through the court system. There's appointments.
So it's awesome.
Yeah.
But are you like a lawyer first?
Not necessarily. No. Now we're talking about a judge, a civil, or mishpati. You're talking about like a beit din. Beit din is also theoretically right. They can be, but theoretically, there are two levels of smicha. I have what's called Yora, and there's the higher levels, Yadin. I started learning for it many years ago. I probably could do it now, but I'm not going to do it. So yeah, technically to be a permanent Beit Din, you should have Yadin. I've acted as a judge in a few cases. I mentioned before in monetary cases, without having Yadin, it's okay. But yeah, it's okay. But right.
You do.
Yeah, to be a judge.
Yeah.
Okay. The states, by the way, you don't have to be. You can just appointed as a judge, stop. Mm-hmm. And then, but to be, so let's say I had Yadin, and there are two other people in the neighborhood. We could just put together a Beit Din. We don't have, it's by our own volition. Again, in the times of Beit HaMikdash, and there's the Sanhedrin, this court says 323 and 71. There was a different type of situation. What did become a political position was the Kohen Gadol. Okay, we're going to talk about that actually in the next Mishnah. It's going to come up.
Never.
Correct. Right. Should be completely disconnected. So again, the kinds of leading questions, but this also doesn't apply just in the courtroom. I mentioned last week that although the last Mishnah and this Mishnah are talking about a courtroom, it's also messages to everybody. For us, we live in the courtroom of our mind, how we deal with people. When you're talking to someone for hiring for a job, looking for a mate, or for shidduch for somebody, you have to be very careful to make sure you say what you want, find out certain questions. Don't ask questions that you're trying to get certain responses from. Again, I'm leaving it kind of amorphous because there's really no direct point I want to make exactly with that. It's also true with spouses, it's true with children. Yeah. Now I do want to mention one thing interesting. Not that it wasn't interesting till now. It didn't come out right. That's like, wow, you really look good today. When every other day I look like, junk. Shimon ben Shetach is also well known for two things, more than two, but two specific things that he instituted. He gave a special, there's a word, it's actually Aramaic. It's used in Hebrew, gushpanka. Gushpanka is like your seal of approval. It's from Aramaic. You'll find it tomorrow. He gave his gushpanka and made the ktubat isha, the ksuba the woman gets at a wedding, much stronger and much more empowered. And it empowers the woman. It does not give, if you don't know this, but the woman is not given any obligation to the ksuba at all. The ksuba is 100% obligations to the man, but it gave a certain power to the validity and everything else. That's one. And one thing that's still this very day. Another thing he instituted till this very day that he put into practice was the requirement to have a school system, to have your children go to school. After a certain age, they have to be in school and what they should be learning. He didn't write a curriculum, obviously, but maybe it's not obvious. But he did institute the idea of a community has to have schools for its children. So, which is kind of cool because it gave me a job. Okay, so that's where, like I said, it's going to be only about a few minutes on this one Mishnah. I want to go into the second Mishnah. We're going to talk about two people whom you may have heard of before, and it's going to be Mishnah Yud, number 10 of the first chapter. I'm going to read the Mishnah, give you a little background on Shmaya Naftalyon, and it's got a lot of meat in this one. It's interesting about this last Mishnah. I said I'm only going to spend 5 minutes on. So when I prepare for a class, I like to do sometimes, not always, an exhaustive research on what I'm teaching. I like to try not to walk in just off the top of my head, wing it. That I never do. But there's very little written on that last Mishnah. There's a few comments here and there, but this one has a lot, and we'll do some of it. Okay, Shmaya ve'Avtalyon kipu mehem. Now, Shmaya and Avtalyon are the next generation after Yehuda ben Taba and Shimon ben Shetach. They, Shmaya and Avtalyon, received their Torah from the prior two, the other Zug before. By the way, they are the next to last Zug, next to last pair, because the next one's going to be Shammai and Hillel, which we're going to connect them with the story probably next week, not this week. Let's see, what do they say? Shmaya omer, ehov et hamelacha, love work, usnat rabbanut. Now, it does not literally mean hate the rabbinate. Okay, we're going to see what that means. I know everyone reads that and say, yes, I do hate the rabbanut. Val titvadal rashut, and don't become known to the authorities. It's very, it's very not unclear, but it's kind of murky what he's trying to tell us here. It really sounds like, first of all, they're not necessarily related, this whole thing. And in addition to that, especially the middle sentence statement, usnat rabbanut, and like hate the rabbanut. That's not what it means. I'm curious, what does it say in English for rabbanut? Lordliness, yes. Okay, lordship, what is it? Mastery. Oh, okay, there you go. That's a little bit more. That's probably Art Scroll, right? Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to come to that. So let's first talk a little bit about Shmaya Naftalyon. Let me get something from my phone first. Here. Just going to answer all my messages. You could just hit here. No, just joking. Okay. So Shmaya Naftalyon were either Gerim, converts, or the children of converts, which is amazing when you think about it, because they're not the only ones. We have the Dolim of our history that converted into Judaism. Have you ever heard of Onkelos, who translated the Torah and some of the Navi into Aramaic? Not much, no, that's not true. But in the Torah, it not only is the translation into Aramaic, but it's also, Rashi quotes it all the time, because the word he'll change, it gives meaning to such a word. So Onkelos was a ger. Plenty of people were gerim, and we've gotten tremendous goodness from the gerim. So I'm going to read to you a story that takes place. It says as follows: The story was that after Yom Kippur, now remember, Yom Kippur, we know that the time of Beit HaMikdash revolved around the avodah of Musaf, the additional tefillah, which wasn't tefillah per se, but with the Kohen Gadol, they had two animals, and one was sent to be thrown off a cliff, and one about all this stuff. And we read about it, if you're still with it, the afternoon of late morning, early afternoon of Yom Kippurim, where we talk about the avodah. So now we're talking, the story takes place Motzei Yom Kippurim, and the Kohen Gadol is finished, he's done for the day. So people went with him to escort him back home so he can eat. Which was the custom of every Motzei Yom Kippur. And when the people, as they're walking the Kohen Gadol down this way, they saw, whoa, there's Shmaya and Avtalyon. They saw them. They left the Kohen Gadol. And instead, they changed direction. They went over to Shmaya and Avtalyon, who were like the Nasi and the Avbetin, like the two leaders, and they went to accompany them. Didn't sit well with the Kohen Gadol. When Shmaya and Avtalyon were going to enter their home, and Shmaya and Avtalyon decided they wanted to just check and see how the Kohen Gadol was. They decided before they go home, let's check on the Kohen Gadol. Amara Kohen Gadol Shmaya v'Avtalyon. So the Kohen Gadol, as he sees Shmaya and Avtalyon coming to him, who was really disrespected a few minutes ago, he said to them, Yelchu l'shalom b'nei ha'amamim. You people of the people, you children of the people, go in peace. B'nei ha'amamim was a derogatory term, meaning you converts. You just go in peace. Amrule. So Shmaya and Avtalyon said back to the Kohen Gadol, Yatin b'nei ha'amamim l'shalom shosin ma'aseh Aaron. Let us Gerim, us converts, go in peace, because we act in the proper way of the children of Aaron. Shehayahu Shalom v'rodev Shalom, because Shema and Naphtali are both known for being lovers of peace, just like Aaron. And don't let go to peace the descendant of Aaron, i.e., the Kohen Gadol, because he doesn't act like Aaron, because he was very disrespectful the way he spoke to Shema and Naphtali. Because the Kohen Gadol insulted them by calling them Gerim, or Bnei Amamim. We see that they were actually Gerim. So it's not their fault that the people came after them anyways to start looking. The purpose of the story is not to tell the story itself, but that this is one of the stories that we know from there, that Shmaya and Naphtali were either themselves converts or the children of converts. What's very important to understand also as a side point is we have to be exceedingly careful when talking to a ger, talking to a convert, and what you're never allowed to physically say, to verbally abuse someone. Okay, I can't, you idiot, stupid, you don't know what you're doing. You're not allowed to verbally abuse somebody. I'm not talking in the classic ways. I'm talking even just, you don't, well, that's when you can say it, obviously, because you got to speak the truth. And I know a lot of those people. But there's an additional isur, an additional prohibition when it comes to a ger. And also you're not allowed to remind the ger, oh, you remember when you used to eat pork, you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff, because that also is a form of verbal abuse. It's called, I might just went blank. Oh my gosh, whatever. No, but besides the embarrassment, there's actual, it's even deeper than that. Ona'at dvarim. Ona'at dvarim can be something benign, such as you own a store, your mom and pop operation, and I walk into your store and I'm pretending I'm going to buy a whole bunch of stuff, and you're thinking like, yeah, I'm going to make some money here finally, and I have absolutely no intention to buy anything. It's a sur. If I go in and I know I'm just browsing, quote unquote, I'm just comparing prices, I have to tell you that. It's not true. It's not true if it's if it's a regular store, like a store that either the people just get a salary, and it's not. If a person's on commission, let's say you go to buy United States, you go to a suit store. The guy's on commission. You always know they're on commission. How can I help you, sir? No, that looks really well. Good on you. Blah blah blah. So the guy's on commission. So you can't be trying on suits and all that kind of stuff, and you're not going to buy it. You're just doing because you want to get a picture for some selfie or whatever it might be. That's a sur. It's ona'at dvarim. It's a form of verbal abuse. And the other extreme, of course, is verbally abusing someone, actually trying to hurt them. And especially when it comes to the ger, you can't do that. So it was a really big problem with especially this time of history, which we're going to talk about in a few weeks, Bezrat Hashem, with the resurgence, not resurgence, but the birth of Christianity, and then the split between the Jews and what became the non-Jews, the Christian world, and some people to come back to Judaism, decide to move from Christianity to Judaism, all kinds of interesting stuff. Okay, so let's talk now about this particular this mission, this kind of stuff. Okay, let me ask you a question. I want you to define work. What does it mean, work? What's work? I say have a good day at work.
Maybe having something to do. Or
having something to do. Okay.
schedule.
A schedule. What else could work be?
Something you get paid.
Something you get paid for. You make a pranasa. Okay. Make an income. What else is work? So let me ask you, if I pour this glass of water on this shelf, or I pour it on the plants, or I pour it on someone's head, is that work?
Maybe it's something positive, contributing.
Okay, you're on the right track. Good. So the answer is it depends on text. Yeah, that's definitely positive. Yeah. Okay. If it were Shabbat, and if I were to take this water, pour this water into the plants over there at Shabbat, I did an Isur Doraita. It's called Zoreya. Anything you do to promote growth on Shabbat is prohibited. That's work. There's no one on planet Earth outside of Judaism with the definition of Zoreya. I would say what I did was work. Right? That's not work. It's no exertion, because most people compare or connect work with exertion, or work for making an income, or having a schedule. But pouring water on a plant? So halacha, when it comes to Shabbat, defines melacha as causing a change in something, causing something to be um, it altered, improved. Sometimes it's not even improved. It's the opposite, like you tear because you want to sew something up. But anything that will bring change. Parenthetically, the reason that caring on Shabbat, which people grew up with an Eruv their entire lives, have no clue what it's about, why it's considered a melacha geruah, what do you say it in English? It's considered like a quote bad melacha, is because it's the only one that doesn't have any change. If I take a book from my house, I walk into public domain with no eruv, it's a book before, it's a book after, like no change. Everything else is some kind of a change. It's not necessarily visible. It may not be right now. If I take a piece of, in my backyard, I go and I take a spoon or my finger and I scrape out a little dirt because I plan to plant a seed there the next day. It's choresh. It's plowing on Shabbat. It's not work, right? But it's a change. Halacha defines melacha on Shabbat as something of this nature. It falls in the 39 major categories and all kinds of subcategories. In this context here, what he's telling us, it says, Ehavat HaMalacha can have multiple meanings. Number one, we'll use Susie's definition. Being productive, having a schedule. In other words, doing something on a regular basis, and you should want to do that. You should want to have meaning in life, to be doing something. It also can have a connection to the concept of Melacha on Shabbat. What does that mean? Adding value, bringing value added into this world. I've mentioned before, and it's not an original thought, I've mentioned before that when you look in Unatana Tokef on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you'll see it says, Kama yibareu, Kama ya'avrun v'chama yibareu. How many will pass away from this world and how many will be born into this? That's how we translate it. But that's not what it says. There's a wonderful, I wish I remember who I heard this from, said, Kama ya'avrun, how many people are just going to pass through this world? Not really contribute to anything. They exist. How many will be from the word livro, to create? How many be creative? How many are going to leave their mark in this world and really do something? So Avot HaMalacha is also this concept of love work, like want to make a difference in this world, do something. That's on a more grand level. On a more scaled down level, it means there's an expression that supposedly is based on a pasuk in Mishne, which is a big stretch. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Okay, there's different girsa'ot, different versions out there. But it means, and we see something similar to that, we'll see later in Pirke Avot, when you don't have something to do, it can lead to problems sometimes. Which is why sometimes you'll find the percentage of people committing crimes are people who've been out of work, and not just because they're drug addicts or they're out of work, they need something to do. It could be that, not just because they're so on the one hand, again, it could be something being creative that you like want to be someone who's creative in this role. One is to have a parnasah, because you're not allowed to put yourself in a position where you rely on the community to support you. Okay, I'll say that again. You're not allowed to say, let someone else pay for me. I'll be on welfare. I'll take money from the state, and I'm going to let everyone else do the work for me. Okay? Because you're not allowed to make yourself a burden on the community. That's what you do. A person
Right,
there's
that. No.
that's a fact. Yes, I know it doesn't seem to have made it to all the school systems and educational systems in Israel.
What
But-
if they're learning?
Okay, so right, so there is a definite need for people who student learning, definitely for them to be the kollel and getting paid for it and all. The old joke is how many boys are learning in Lakewood? About half of them. So yesh v'yesh. There's no question. If someone said, "Oh, we should shut down all the kollels," it's stupid. That's ridiculous because we need that more than we need people working. Because without Torah, we don't have anything. But on the same token, it's been taken advantage of in tremendous amount. And people, I was doing a test bug group with a student this week in English, and the topic had to do with poverty in Israel. And we started segue, since it was a real bug group, we could have a discussion about self-imposed poverty. And self-imposed poverty is where people basically say, I'm just going to sit at home. I'll go to the Beit Midrash once in a while, and then I'll get money from the state, and then you're taxing to pay for it. And people are living below poverty level in tremendous numbers. And what's going to happen now in the next generation? Thank God we're starting to see an upswing in people and certain sectors are going out to work now more and getting a real education. Okay, that's good. But you're not allowed to make yourself a burden on the community. As a matter of fact, it says, "Aseh Shabbatcha chol, al titzarech labriot." Make your Shabbat like a weekday. I'll explain what that means, but don't make yourself a burden on others. What does that mean? It means, so you don't have chicken meat for Shabbat. So you know what? Have a tuna sandwich, if that's what it's going to mean, instead of having to make everyone pay for your Shabbat meal. Now, there are people who have needs. There are people who try and have needs. But either there's someone not in the community here, someone not in Mali, it's Israel, but not in Mali. I've been helping over the years with various things and doesn't help himself at all. And finally, a family member called me up and said, so-and-so needs help again. I said, no. Why? He doesn't go to work. He doesn't try. He doesn't even look for a job. He said, well, I told him, I said, this, you can work at my college. He says, well, that's beneath me. Really? It's beneath you. Oh, okay. Well, then I'll tell you what, find somewhere else to get money. And when I say I help, by the way, I don't mean from my own pocket. I'm talking about to get funds.
Maybe it is like, you know, there's like these people that stand literally on like a groan and they collect money.
That's their job.
That's their job. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, can that be considered their job? They're snoring.
The schnorrers.
I mean, they're not paying
And by the way, 3/4, and first of all, not paying taxes. They might be. They might be. Yeah, they give out little kabbalot. Yeah. Right. That's right. They do have to. They have to. That's right. But at the same time, I can't answer that because first of all, a lot of them are fake. You know, a lot of people are fakers. I don't know. It's not, you can't call that a job. I can't call it a job. You know, it is work. It's hard work. That's right. It's hard work. Standing.
Is that where they're collecting for themselves?
Yeah, no, it's for himself.
No, for themselves.
He tells me he's for
No,
himself.
if someone's collecting for actually an organization, and even if they're getting, they probably are getting a percentage of it, or that's fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's legitimate.
Somebody comes to the door and says, I'm collecting for X to you. Hey, man,
You have no chiyuv to give to them.
I always looked at it, I'm keeping this guy money.
Right.
What he does with it, that's.
Right. That's fine. That's fine. I'm saying to you though, pi'alacha, it's only one day a year you have to give someone who asks for money, and that's important. That's it. Every other time someone comes to your door, you don't have to give. When someone's in the street, you don't have to give. You can. It's your right. And also, I've gotten this question before. We have in our house a whole bunch of pushkas, tzedakah boxes. Let's say I put money in one, and then decide I'm not going to give it to them. I decide to give it to somebody else, a different organization. That's perfectly fine. Just the fact that it's in this moment, their name on it doesn't mean it's now set aside just for them. There's one organization, the Yeshiva Kochav Yaakov or Yaakov Shachar, regularly every few months. He's such a nice guy. He takes his old tzedakah box, he pours it in the bag. You get a receipt. You know, about a week later, 62.313. It's just great. It is a great market. It goes around. And, because I know that I put in there, I know for sure it's going to be collected. I know it's going to go to an organization. So that's correct. Right.
We started giving money. We did it when our sons were in yeshiva. I was like, why are we getting into this yeshiva? We should have been thinking.
Yeah. I've been there, done that. Now, there's another meaning here. Avot malacha. Unfortunately, many people don't like what they do in life. They don't like their job. In the United States, I can tell you that the most common day and time for a male to have a heart attack is, nope, God forbid. I hope not, because mine's coming up soon. What? Monday morning in the shower. Monday morning, getting ready in the morning, because they're facing the beginning of the week, and I can't do it. I hate my job. I hate my life. So don't shower. That's his conclusion from that. That's interesting. Anyways, so in other words, it means you want to do what you love. You really want to work on do something you love, which leads to the topic of seeking out your calling in life. What is it we're here for? What is it we're doing? So when I know some of you know this, but not everybody, that when I was, before I became Rabbi Bashol, I worked in the business world. I worked for 17 years in two different companies, 12 or 13 in one, another couple years in another company as director of purchasing. It was a great experience to have before becoming a Rabbi Bashol. It was a tremendous experience. Got to learn a lot about people and humans and how they work, and brains work. And in any case, I was getting to the point, I was working for a company, I had come out of bankruptcy, and then I was hired then, the second job. And I could see things were not working out. And I knew I knew I was going to get fired or laid off. And that's what happened. Just around then, a book had come out by Rabbi Basil Haran. Some of you may have heard his name. He was the executive director of the Rabbinical Council of America. I've since met him multiple times. Back then, I didn't know who it was. The book came out called The Rabbinate as a Calling. And I took it out of the library. And I read it like almost cover to cover right away. And I said, you know what? This really speaks to me. This really is something there. I never really said, oh, I want to be a rabbi one day. I wanted to get smicha. I wanted the education. I want to be able to help people with questions here and there, but not necessarily on an official basis. And I ever said at the shul where I was the Rav, where I'd grown up, that the Rav was going to retire, I would think about it, but that'd be the only place. And then that's what ended up happening. I found and discovered over the years, just early on, I felt it, and over the years, there's zero doubt in my mind that my tafkid in this world, my calling, was to do this kind of, I don't call it work. When I went to the shul, we lived literally 30-second walk from shul. I never said to Andy, I'm going to work. Not once. I'm going to shul, I'm going to the office, I'm going whatever. Because I don't look at it work. I really don't. And I can really say Avot Malacha, for me personally, is true in my life. I almost never have gotten up and said, I really hate what I'm doing. I can't stand going to the gym. Never. I've been that fortunate in my career, in the business world, in teaching, the rabbinate, whatever it's been. Unfortunately, not everyone's that lucky. So it's almost this calling to say, if you don't like what you're doing, but you still have years ahead of you to work, then it's better for you, your health, your mental health, your physical health, your family's health, your financial health, to find what you want to do and change, even if it's mid-career, late in career. I know people who there was a guy in the first company I worked at for those 15 or so years. He was a draftsman. Anton Kohler, nice old German guy. And Anton was one of these guys, I think he was, with no exaggeration, 270 years old when he was born. And nicest guy. And we got to talking one day. And I asked him, like, man, how many years have you been a draftsman? Now you don't need draftsmen. Everything's CAD, CAM, you put it in the computer, boom, it does it for you. But back then, he had this big paper, he's drawing blueprints and all. I said, how long have you been doing this? So he said, I don't know, Zev, maybe about 4 years. 4 years? He understood right away what I meant. I'm thinking implication is, man, you're an old man. What do you mean only? He says, yeah, I was a pharmacist for 50 years. I said, what? He says, yeah, and finally decided after 50 years, I hated it. Oh, okay. So I went to school to do something I really liked to do, and that was I learned to be a draftsman, and I decided to work at it. That takes guts, first of all. Very inspiring. I was very inspired by that, actually. What's that? And you have to, that's true also. Yeah. Now, the truth is that a lot of people, one of the how do you say machsom in English? Obstacle, blockage, I guess, barrier to making aliyah is that they need to reinvent themselves. Because what you did there, meaning chutz la'aretz, and what you can do here aren't always the same thing. A person who's in high tech and computers generally can port their job from one place to another. And very often I know people, and you do too, I'm sure, who work here American hours and they do stuff over there. That's fine. But not everyone can do that. So if you're a teacher, you might be able to bring some of those skills here. Maybe, if you're an accountant, right? If you're a lawyer, you have to not start from scratch, but you have to learn a new series of laws, and then you have to keep your brain. If you're doing both American and Israel taxes, bifurcate your brain now, because how are you going to think for this? Oh wait, the law is different here. So it's not that easy, and sometimes you have to completely reinvent yourself and go into a new career and say, you know what, I never really thought about. Maybe I should go into X. Okay. Then what does it mean usnat harabanut? Okay, so what the article said on the bottom there, actually read that out loud, please. What it says, what you wrote, what you said says about the, yeah.
Five words, do your utmost to avoid holding positions of dominance and leadership, for they shorten a man's life,
right,
consciousness and rank.
Okay, so the concept of what the art scroll is saying is the idea of being like lording over, having a position, seeking out positions that you lord over people. Now, does that sound like, I shouldn't really strive to be the CEO? Should it sound like I shouldn't strive to be the president or the owner? No. Doesn't mean that. It means that you try to get yourself in position where you're going to want to be able to use the position to manipulate people and to cause them to, it's perfectly fine. Let's say I own a company, right? I own a sales company. I'm selling computers. So I want to motivate my people. I want to try to get the best sales. I want to make sure they make money and I make money. I want to get the best product out in the market. I don't want, would you like it if all the products you were dealing with all of a sudden were junk and you couldn't get people's? No, of course not. So you want to do the best you can. But if I decide I want to buy a company because I want to show people how business is done, now I'm going to lord over them. I'm going to tell them how. We all know people who their boss or their boss's boss or their boss's boss's boss is like just a maniac. They're just a maniac. They're like this power trip. That's all they can think about is them. It's about being a narcissist. It's about me. And that kind of lordship, lording over people, is very bad, because in addition to that, how's that connect to the first line? If you're so involved in the rabbanut aspect, and I'm not talking about the rabbin, I'm talking about the lordship aspect and trying to overbearing over people, you lose the embracing of the malacha. Remember, it says Avot malacha, right? So you can be in a position of authority and at the same time love what you're doing and also have responsibility for people. I remember when I was appointed, I was just a purchasing agent. There's the different levels. I was a purchasing agent, I became purchasing manager. So I had a couple people who were under me. I didn't know how to manage people. I was in my mid-20s. What did I know about managing people? So I took books out of the library. I told somebody the other day, a kid in school, you know what a library is, right? It's a place that has books at paper and you open them up. You can't download it. You actually take it home. So what's that? It is very weird. So old school. So it took out books, how to manage people. And back then there was a big explosion of business books. The 1 Minute Manager. If you've never heard of it, get it. It's this thick. It's thin, but it's fabulous. The 1 Minute Manager. It didn't change my life, but there is a book that probably helped change my perspective in life and dealing with others. Oh my God. It's good for memory too. No, it wasn't. In Search of Excellence. If you haven't read In Search of Excellence, if you have anything to do with business, people are in a business world and environment, In Search of Excellence is absolutely magnificent. If you don't want to read the book, on YouTube, there is a video that was made about the book and some of the examples from the book. One have to do specifically with 3M when they were introducing the concept of a CD and how because that's the time period the book came out, and how they had to sell it to management to really invest in something like that. In Search of Excellence is fabulous. 1 Minute Manager, 7 Habits of Effective People. And then there's the 8 Habits by Stephen Covey. There's all this stuff out there. And I don't care, by the way, what age a person is, because you can always use this in terms also of Torah. You can use it in terms of Torah. Have a good day. To motivate yourself, to always want to be better, because you are, we talk about in Hebrew, we say a person is a ben or bat Torah or a Baal Midot. What's the difference between a ben and a Baal? A ben is a children of, I'm a child of the Torah, and a person is a Baal Midot. I'm an owner of my character traits, because we have control. We don't think so, but we always, but after learning Messiah Yesharim, maybe do believe it a little bit more. We are the owner of it's only up to us to change our character traits. No one else can change it. A spouse can't change you. A child can't change you. A parent can't. Only you can change yourself. So we are Baal Midot, but we are Ben or Bat Torah. We are a child of Torah. Torah is what is our parents, so to speak. So our job is to be a good child. And by doing that means serving Hashem the right way. So whether it's in the business world or in your private personal world or in the world of Torah, we can learn a lot of things, because the Gemara tells us many places, Chochma bagoyim ta'amim. If you find something that's true Chochma, intelligence, wisdom among the non-Jews, believe it. You can accept it. Just say, it's true if it's from the Goyim. No, every book I mentioned is by someone not Jewish, but they're fabulous books. Okay, and then so we're going to start now the class. I'm going to read to you one statement here. This is the end of Kiddushin. It says as follows: Rabbi Norai Omer, Maniach ani kol umanot shebaolam ulamed et beni Torah. I will put aside all jobs, all work, and I'll teach my child Torah. This is going to sound like it contradicts what I just said, by the way. Shekol umanot shebaolam, because every other job in the world, or actually means trade in the world, harehen betelot be'et hazikna, v'hu mutal bera'av. Because everything else, when a person is a job they do, when the person gets elderly and is unable to do their job anymore, then person theoretically would starve. They don't have income. And but Torah stands by and helps a person both as a child, as an adult, or as an elderly. But it gives him good end and hope. I don't go into the details here because this is the one thing we can spend a lot of time, but it almost sounds like the opposite we just said, doesn't it? It's like it says, now you just tell me, wait, put away all the malacha, put away all manut. As a matter of fact, there's another Mishne Kiddushin that says a parent that doesn't teach his child a trade is like he taught him to be a thief. Gemara says, Ganav Salkadal, you mean we taught him to be a thief? No, because he's not going to have a trade, he's going to go out tarbut ra, he's going to do bad things, eventually he's going to steal to make money. That's his income. He'll probably report it also. Of course he will. So I'm going to leave this as an open question. I want to pick this up next week. That's what Hashem. Like, what does this mean? How do we not correlate? What's the word? How do we reconcile this two things? The one hand, the other hand, how Rabbi Norai says, I put aside all trades. Not just learn Torah all day. Well, what about Parnasa? Right? So we'll leave that for next week. That's what Hashem. All right. Have a wonderful day.